So wasting no time, Jay Z's lawyer files a request to the judge to dismiss the civil lawsuit as against Jay Z. Let's go ahead and talk about this, and let me know if you've already heard about what's been going on. Do you see the judge tossing this thing out, or do you think that the plaintiff should get her opportunity in court? Welcome back if you've already watched some of my videos. If you don't know me, my name is Jamahl Kersey. I'm a criminal defense attorney in San Diego, California. I've been practicing law for over 15 years, and on this channel, we're breaking down legal concepts to keep you in the know. So, as you know, the allegations against Jay Z, he was recently named in this lawsuit, right? So this lawsuit had already been pending for some weeks as against Sean Puffy Combs, but we know that Jay Z was just added. The allegations are that back in 2000, this girl who is the plaintiff in this case, well, she's a woman now, she's almost 40, but back when she was 13, she wanted to get into a party at the VMAs, ended up connecting with one of Puff's limo drivers who took her to the mansion where this after party was happening. She goes in, someone serves her a drink. After she drinks the drink, she ends up feeling woozy, makes her way to a room, at which point Puff, now we know Jay Z, allegedly, along with a unnamed female celebrity, go into the room. Puff says something to the effect of, "You're ready to party now." Jay Z allegedly takes her clothes off, proceeds to rape her. Sean Combs follows up. Meanwhile, the unnamed female celebrity is just watching, doesn't appear to have said anything or done anything. And she then, musters up the strength to punch Diddy or to attack him to try and get away. She ends up making her way away. So there was recently an NBC interview in which the plaintiff in this case sat down and gave her side of the story. And it turns out that there were a few inconsistencies in this interview. So Jay Z's lawyer didn't waste any time in being able to point out those inconsistencies and asking for the judge to immediately dismiss the case. Now, if you're like me, you probably were wondering, well, why did this interview happen in the first place? And why was she alone, right? Usually when you see press conferences for people who were victims of rape or sexual assault at the hands of a celebrity or at the hands of a major businessman, right? Because a lot of times these cases happen, but they're not publicized because, it's not involving somebody famous, right? But when it is involving somebody famous, typically you're going to have that complaining witness or the victim or the plaintiff in that case accompanied by their lawyer. And typically it's the lawyer that's giving the statements, right? And it's not because their client is lying or it's not because their client is being deceptive or anything like that. It's just that the lawyer is more equipped to say what needs to be said, and they're there to speak on behalf of their clients. You're generally not going to have a victim in that situation giving a statement, and certainly not alone. So that raised some serious eyebrows, at least for me, that in and of itself. But then it turns out that she's on the spectrum. Sounds like she has autism, and that just further complicates the issues, right? So I was really surprised at the fact that she would be giving this interview alone. But let's get into some of these inconsistencies that were pointed out by the defense and by NBC in their investigation of this situation. The first major thing was the mistake of dates. So she says that this happened at a VMA after party after the 2000 VMAs. Well, it turns out that Sean, right? Jay Z and Diddy were together, but at a club versus a house party or a mansion party at the 2000 VMAs. And so if they weren't even at the location where she says this took place, then obviously that's going to call into question whether this actually happened, right? The other thing was that she had said that she had a conversation with one of the band members of the band Good Charlotte and talking about his tattoos and just engaged in this conversation. Well, it turns out that Good Charlotte, and in 2000, at the time of the VMAs, they were on tour and they weren't even in the state of New York at the time. So there's no possible way that she could have been having this conversation at the time that she said she had this conversation, right? Another telling thing was they followed up with the dad, and the dad couldn't seem to remember this having taken place. And if you watch my prior video, that's one of the questions that I would have had. I would want to know, Dad, you came and you went and picked up your daughter. What was her, what was her state of mind? How did she appear physically? What was her facial expressions? She said that he picked her up and it was silence, right? They never actually talked about the situation. And I actually addressed that as well. I said, there's a possibility that, a daughter would want to tell her father what happened, but there's also a possibility that they just wouldn't say anything, right? There's a lot of, just shock in terms of something like this having happened to you as a 13-year-old girl. And then, there's guilt, there's shame, there's embarrassment. These are oftentimes emotions that are associated with having been the victim of a sexual assault. So it didn't necessarily need to be the case that she would have been talking about this incident. But the fact that the father had no recollection relating to having picked his daughter up after a situation like this was very telling. So based on these factors and Jay-Z's denials, his lawyer is saying that, hey, there's no possible way that this could have happened based on the way that she has reported this incident. On top of that, our client did not do this. And so the judge needs to throw out this case. And realistically, this is exactly what you do in a he said, she said case. At Kersey Law, we handle a lot of domestic violence cases and some sexual abuse cases as well. And a lot of times these are going to be situations where there are no other parties present. There's no other evidence, right? There's no witnesses. There's no videos capturing the incident. There's no photographs capturing the incident. And so in large part, these are he said, she said situations. And so what you end up having to do is point out the lies, the inconsistencies, the misrepresentations while playing up your client's good character in order to make the argument that they would never do something like this, right? And that's exactly what Jay-Z's lawyer is doing here. And witness credibility is a very big issue. And in fact, if a case ends up going to trial, the jury is given instructions. Well, they're given instructions on the law in terms of what the party needs to prove in order to prevail. In a criminal case, what the prosecution needs to prove, and in a civil case, what the plaintiff needs to prove. And, so they get the elements of those causes of action or of those crimes that need to be proved. But there is an instruction regarding witness credibility. And some of the things, we're not going to go through all of the factors, but some of the things that the jury is asked to look at with respect to witness credibility is how well was the witness able to remember and describe what happened. Now, when it comes to what she alleges having happened, she does go into detail in terms of, how it ultimately went down. But can this issue regarding dates end up being an issue? Again, if she's saying that this happened in 2000 and nobody was at any sort of mansion party, or at least, Puff and Jay weren't at some sort of mansion party, but rather at a club, then that is going to be an issue. But I did see, and I think her name is Tisa Tales, she did a pretty thorough job investigating this situation, was able to line up the possibility that it may have happened in 2003 versus 2000. And so I haven't really gone into that deeply, so I can't speak intelligently on that. But that is a possibility that if there were some sort of mistake of dates, and we're talking about something that happened almost 25 years ago, 2000 is not that far from 2003. So I don't want to say that, hey, just because she said it happened in 2000, that this case should ultimately be thrown out. Obviously, that's what the defense is saying. But it appears that there may be some information that maybe she was mistaken and it might have happened in 2003 versus 2000. But nonetheless, that will be an issue with respect to witness credibility. Another major factor that jury has to consider when analyzing, witnesses and their credibility is, was their testimony influenced by a factor such as bias, prejudice, or a personal relationship, or a personal interest in how this case should be decided. Now, when we're talking about a civil lawsuit, there's always money, or there's generally speaking money at the end of the case that they're looking for, right? And so the money would be the interest, right, that you're seeking in trying to get this case to play out in your favor. So, and that's a criticism that a lot of people have, and even Jay-Z and his lawyers have been saying, hey, this is a money grab, both by the plaintiff and their lawyers. And so they're trying to say, because people will generally ask with a case like this, why would somebody make up something like this? Why would somebody lie about having been either raped or sexually assaulted? And again, if you have an opportunity to, earn a multi-million-dollar cash out, then, that is going to be incentive for somebody to lie and make these things up. Now, just because somebody is seeking damages doesn't mean that whatever they're alleging did not happen to them, but it is a factor that the jury can take into consideration. Another really important portion of this instruction is if you decide that a witness deliberately lied about something significant in this case, you should consider not believing anything that witness says. Now, this is coming from California law, but I assume that, New York law is going to be pretty similar as it relates to witness evaluation. But this goes to the point of, I know you know somebody in your life who, you could bet your life on what they say because they're just an honest person. You'd bet your life savings on what it is that they're saying because you don't know them to be a lying individual. On the flip side, you know somebody in your life where you can't believe anything they say, right? They lie about the most random things. Oh, I went to the gym yesterday. No, you didn't go to the gym yesterday. The gym was closed. The gym was flooded out. How'd you go to the gym, right? There are people that you just cannot believe anything that they say. And this speaks to this point, right? If you find that a person has credibility issues and they're lying about something in a case, if they're lying, there are a ton of inconsistencies. There's objective evidence that proves that they're lying about certain things. You can find them to be so unbelievable that we're just not going to believe anything that they say, right? Now that's pretty extreme. They also say you can kind of pick and choose, you can believe that they lied about one thing and they're telling the truth about another thing. And the other thing is that somebody could be lying about 20 different things and be telling the truth about the main thing. That's one of the hardest things for a client to accept, when you have somebody who is lying about a number of different things, but it is possible that they're telling the truth about the main thing. And that can be in a domestic violence case, or it can be in a sexual assault or rape case, right? And so this is partly why I don't think this is going to be tossed out, at least not immediately here, because, let's just say you have that friend who is a liar and they lie consistently about things, but you go to their house, they open the door, they got a neck brace on, right? They have a neck brace on, they got a cast on their leg, and you look in the driveway, you see their car, it's all bashed in the rear, right? It looks like they were rear-ended, and your friend tells you, the friend who lies about everything tells you, hey, I was in a car accident and, I got messed up pretty badly. And you're like, man, okay, well, I see the car in the driveway. It's all bashed in. I see the neck brace. I see the cast. Even though you lie about every single other thing, you're probably telling the truth about this thing, right? And so people can have a character for being a liar or lacking credibility. And again, I'm not saying that this plaintiff in this case is a liar or anything like that. I'm just saying, as it relates to these jury instructions and assessing witness credibility, even though there might be some inconsistencies, it doesn't mean that she's lying about the main thing. Again, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. You weren't there. I'd like to think, I just continue to repeat, I'd like to think that this didn't happen, but I don't know. When we look at the standard of proof for a judge dismissing a case, what you have to understand is the law favors resolution of cases on their merits. What does that mean? It basically means that we don't like to just toss cases out in the initial stages based on, a technicality. We want to give people their day in court. Now, there are some cases that have no business being put in front of a jury and getting shut down. And those are cases that are more readily dismissed. And it sounds like Jay-Z's lawyer is trying to paint this case as one of those situations. But I think, again, based on the fact that there might be some sort of alternative explanation for her inconsistencies, other than that she's just lying about the whole thing, and we haven't heard from Tony Busby, the attorney, right? There may be some sort of explanation for these things. And ultimately, I really believe that a judge is going to find that, hey, this is what the discovery process is for. You will be able to explore all of these issues and more in order to set yourself up to maybe file a motion to dismiss later at a later date. And so the judge is probably going to say, hey, just because her dad doesn't remember this particular car ride, and just because she may have been mistaken as to dates, I'm not just going to throw this whole case out. You will be able to explore this stuff in the discovery process, including being able to depose her, right? So she can be subject to a deposition where you're able to cross-examine her and get out all these details. But, you know, to just throw this case out based on these arguments would be really unfair. I mean, it's obvious why Jay-Z wants this case to be thrown out. I mean, especially if his position is that he did not do this, he didn't do anything wrong. I could see, you know, obviously why he would want this shut down sooner rather than later. However, given what I said earlier in terms of, you know, the way courts view dismissals and wanting to resolve cases on their merits, I think this thing is going to continue forward. They're going to have to go through the discovery process, and maybe they're able to make more revelations in terms of how the facts don't line up, and so the case should be thrown out. But at this early stage, it's just too premature for a judge to throw out a case, especially one of this magnitude. But what are your thoughts? Do you think this thing should be thrown out already, or do you think the plaintiff should have her day in court? Let me know in the comments below. And if you got something out of this video, show me some love, hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.